Sarah, who's in the town room?
No audience members,
No,
just us, and Megan is leaving.
okay. I saw Bridget came in, right?
Yes, I'm here.
You should see her. Do you not see her on the, oh, are you not?
I don't see
I'm
her on
just- Is that-
Andrew, do you want to check in with Milan? Or can you?
Deb, we're having tech issues here. Can
Okay,
you hold? Thank you.
of course. Andrew, do you want to check in with Milan?
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
I've texted him, but he hasn't replied yet, but, he's included or should be.
I see
Deb,
myself.
we're having
now.
tech issues here. Can
Okay.
you hold? Can you
Thank you.
promote Bridget? Can you promote Bridget to be in?
Andrew, do you want to check in with Milan?
Yeah, I've texted him, but he hasn't replied yet, but, he's included or should be.
I see
Deb,
myself.
we're having
now.
tech issues here. Can
Okay.
you hold?
Thank
Can
you.
you promote Bridget? Can you promote Bridget to be in?
Andrew, do you want to check in with Milan?
Yeah, I've texted him, but he hasn't replied yet, but, he's included or should be.
I see
Deb,
myself.
we're having tech issues here. Can
Okay.
you hold? Can
Thank
you
you.
promote Bridget? Can you promote Bridget to be in?
Andrew, do you want to check in with Milan?
Deb, can you hear us?
I can.
All right, what can you see? I'm the only one of us here who has a personal camera.
Oh,
see
I
you,
can see in the room.
and I can see the
Okay.
town room.
I believe so. I'm just checking in with Milan.
Megan, before you go, do you know who promotes to panelists or no? Should be able to do it. Okay. Cool. All right, super, thank you. Just because then I can raise my hand for Deb if she needs it.
And this media is all set.
Quick question, is Megan still in the room?
Yeah.
Megan,
Yes.
can you please promote Shannon, Jen, Tom, Joanne, and even Attorney Sankey, just in case before you leave, so that we have everybody who needs to be in? Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Good group, okay. Oh, okay, interesting. There you go. Laura Jean's almost here. Yeah, that's how I knew. I was like, okay. I'm like, she can't be far behind.
Boot it? She doesn't want it. She doesn't understand it or know boot it. I've tried to. You can't expel it.
No, we tried that for a long time with herbs, remember? I feel like Sarah Beth went on trying to figure that out for months. We never really did.
So you think we're ready to start? What's your Deb knows we're ready to start. Yeah. Have you promoted everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, we're just. Deb, we're already here. We're ready to go, that is.
Oh, you're ready. Okay. All right. Let me get my right piece of paper, going old school here. Okay. Seeing the presence of a quorum,
Last week, just didn't clear.
I'm going to call the Amherst School Committee to order at 6:42 p.m. Because one of us is remote, I will do roll call. Sarah,
Here.
I am here. Deb, Andrew,
Here.
Bridget,
Here.
and Laura Jane is not currently with us. Okay. Our first order of business is public comment. And whoever is, Andrew, are you not on computer? So Bridget, is there anybody in the audience who's raising their hand to speak, or either in the room or online?
No one in the room.
There are some people
There are.
in attendance, but I don't know how I'm.
Bum, bum.
Is the host able to tell if somebody is raising
I
their
don't-
hand?
I
We're
don't
all
see any
co-hosts.
raised
No
hands.
hands are raised. I'm assisting as well.
Okay. All right, we have one voicemail. So, Andrew, did you get that or should I try to play it?
Yeah, I can't play it since I don't have a computer. Go
I
ahead.
will, I will do that then. I'm getting a text message that,
Deb, we do have a hand raised while you're,
okay. Okay,
can you make the announcement for public comment so they know to announce their name? Okay, and then let me know when.
so, yep. So, uh, thank you for attending the public meeting of the Amherst School Committee. The meeting will be held in accordance with Massachusetts open law and Robert's Rules of Order. The Amherst School Committee oversees the Amherst School District comprised of Amethyst Brook Elementary, Fort River Elementary, and Chestnut Street Academy. The school committee has purview over the employment, compensation, and evaluation of the superintendent, the review and approval of a fiscally responsible annual budget, the establishment of overarching educational goals, the development of policies as the guide for administrative action, and to strive for continual improvement of the educational programming of the district. Members of the audience are welcome to address the committee during the public comment period of the meeting, generally held at the opening of each meeting. We ask that anybody who wishes to address the committee be recognized by the chair. They should state their written name and affiliation with the district, and generally allowed a maximum of 3 minutes, and a speaker may not assign their time to another individual, but the chair may permit extension of this time limit. At this time, I'm told there's somebody online who would like to make a public comment, so
I will let Ellen JG.
Deb,
yes,
people in the public can't hear us.
they can't hear us at all.
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Can't hear anyone, just
Yeah.
us.
Ellen, are you able to hear us?
I am unmuted. School committee folks, this is Ellen, but I cannot hear you. I apologize.
Okay, Ellen,
Can you call on me in a minute and I will try to figure out why this is happening?
okay.
Yes, I assume you can see us if you're seeing us.
I'm gonna try
Okay.
texting. I don't know if the host can, it's just to the host and panelists. Everyone.
Andrew, what did you say I should text her?
So I put something in the chat. We can hear each other. Is that it? But the audience can't hear us. Okay, Sarah says we can hear Ellen. Andrew, are you able to connect to Melania?
Yes, yeah, and they've been streaming for a bit, and I'm asking him if they can hear us. And Megan confirmed that YouTube, that they can hear us.
Okay. So somebody can, I will do it. I will try to share my screen and leave a message on my screen saying the Zoom isn't working, but people should be able to listen along on YouTube.
That's in charge.
The person who had raised her hand is no longer in the meeting, so
All right.
I don't know what we can do it.
All right. So I'm just going to put that up.
And we're broadcasting sound on YouTube through Amherst Media, and everyone's coming through.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave that up for the moment.
Picture, send it to me.
Okay. All right. So I will go back to the audio and try to play that.
No, Deb, we could see your email. Can you unshare your screen?
Oh, boy. Well, that's my personal email, so that's good.
I would say stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I see there's 2 hands raised, so that's progress. I stopped sharing my screen. Somebody, can you please allow the people who've raised their hands to speak, and I will pull up the audio.
Ellen, if you can hear me, you may speak.
Thank you. My apologies. I don't know if that was on my end.
No, not at all. I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. Okay. First, I am going to read a letter on behalf of a caregiver who wanted to remain anonymous. And I will start now. I am one of the caregivers that submitted their story in the original memo to the school committee and one of the caregivers that was interviewed by Jeffrey Sankey during the investigation of restraints and seclusion in ARPS. I have serious concerns about the accuracy of this report overall, based on how poorly our story was represented in it. In the report, Mr. Sankey states that the district identified the caregivers in the original CPAC memo. The administration decided the stories only came from Wildwood and Fort River families. When the investigator shared this claim with CPAC, CPAC representatives corrected him. When I met with the investigator myself, I clarified which school my child was attending when he endured multiple restraints. And yet, this school was not included in the investigation because the school self-reported they had no restraints, according to a footnote in the report. No records or any other documents were requested from this school, despite the fact that the school is listed as having between 1 and 6 restraints in the 23-24 school year on the DESE website, consistent with our family's testimonial. This suggests he trusted, without question, the district's naming of the anonymous stories in the memo over the testimonial he heard firsthand from parents. The fact that the school did not produce restraint reports only provides further evidence of our claim that we did not receive proper restraint reports within the required time window. I shared my child's story in the original CPAC memo to reinforce the CPAC's request for more staff training to prevent escalation in the first place. This investigation is too narrowly focused on the adequacy of training around de-escalation and restraints. It is missing the big picture. None of the trainings described in the report actually teach staff about neurodiversity. My child is more than a constellation of behaviors to be managed. Thank you. And if you will allow, I would like to read a comment on behalf of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. On behalf of the CPAC Steering Committee, we would like to respond to the recently released report concerning restraint and seclusion in ARPS. First, we want to recognize and applaud the families who came forward and bravely shared their experiences with us. These families did not come forward because they wanted to launch a legal investigation. They did so because they hoped that by telling their stories, the trauma their children experienced at school could be prevented for other students through stronger policy, meaningful oversight, and consistent implementation at every school. The report concludes that the district did not engage in any illegal wrongdoing. However, it's important to note that the investigation was very limited in scope. Only 3 out of the 7 families who shared stories with CPAC spoke with the investigator, and thus the investigation was limited to those 3 stories. It appears that one family's account was either not included in this report or not investigated fully, though they spoke with the investigator. And it's important to distinguish between legal compliance and the experience of a child and family. A finding that policies or practices did not constitute a legal violation does not mean that the experiences families described were insignificant or that there is no need for change. It also does not mean that children weren't harmed. We were disappointed that the report presents one side of the story in a way that can make the concerns raised by parents and CPAC appear to have been an overreaction to a non-issue. We respectfully and fully disagree. There are 2 sides to these stories, and the report represents the district's staff accounts. However, their characterization does not reflect the experiences of the children and families who came forward. Their stories matter. Looking ahead, we hope the new professional development training mandated by policy JKAA will lead to meaningful change. We hope it will help educators better understand and respond to student dysregulation, resulting in fewer situations that escalate to timeout, seclusion, and restraint. But training alone is not enough. Oversight of policy implementation is essential. Policies must be consistently understood, followed, monitored, and evaluated at every school. We need to know not only what policy says, but how it is actually being implemented and experienced by students. This brings us to a related concern at the new Amethyst Brook Elementary School. At open house last night, we were disheartened to see 7 small 6 by 8 foot rooms with brown padded walls. Over the course of the past year, through numerous meetings and emails, we've repeatedly communicated our concerns about these types of environment and the trauma they have caused to children. We emphasize that the construction of a new school presented an opportunity to rethink these spaces and create something better for children, to reset and to re-regulate. A room covered in brown padding with little else in the space does not communicate that message. For families touring their brand new school and to a young student walking in, the message was clear. Little has changed from the blue rooms of Fort River. A new school should be an opportunity to demonstrate what inclusion and belonging in a joyful classroom looks like, particularly for our students receiving special education services. We believe the concerns surrounding the padded rooms at Amethyst Brook, along with the response to the experiences shared by families in the report, should serve as a wake-up call. There is still work to be done. We can and must do better. Our goal is not punishment. It is not an investigation for the sake of an investigation. Our goal is to help create schools where children are understood, where dysregulation is met with empathy rather than escalation, and where restrictive practices are truly a last resort, where all students feel safe, respected, and valued. We hope that school staff, administrators, and the school committee will take this opportunity to listen to families, strengthen oversight, examine how policies are implemented in practice, and continue moving toward a new, more inclusive and genuinely neurodiversity affirming educational system. Our children deserve nothing less. And thank you for allowing me to go over. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellen. If you email those, I will attach them to the agenda.
We will. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to mute Ellen and allow Carolina Davis to speak.
Hi, Carolina. Can you please state your name and your affiliation with the district? And
Hi, my name is, can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, okay. My name's Carolina Davis, and my affiliation with the district is I have I'm a parent guardian of 4 special needs children who one of them has gone through the system and is 20, and the other one we just moved to a different school district this year. But my son and daughter both insisted that I make some sort of a comment after their friends had told them that the new building has several brown padded rooms that were similar to the blue room that didn't look different at all, and other than the color of the pads. And I didn't experience it myself, but after reading the investigative report, I just wanted to point out a couple comments that are true to our family. We volunteered to do an interview with the investigative reporter, but they never followed through and we were not interviewed. We did write a letter at the beginning of one of the school committee readings, and I believe my daughter wrote a traumatic poem about her school experience at Fort River that was read at another school committee meeting somewhere. But I wanted to just point out that prevention, I believe, one, they were in violation as far as our family was concerned, because my child was excessively restrained and it was not documented. Several of the restraint paperwork was never given to me. I wasn't even called on the phone. My child would often try to call me from a school phone and tell me to come get him. My daughter, who's now 20, went through years of therapy and was diagnosed with PTSD and had to do EMDR for a very long time, and continually struggles as a young adult with her powerlessness that she feels, that all stems from Fort River using these rooms. To this very last year, I have some restraint reports they did turn in, and right up until last year when my son was still there, he was being restrained and confined and isolated for not only extended periods of time, but when he wasn't a threat to himself or to others. Therapists have observed and confirmed this. That's why we were able to get my child out of the district, because of our lawyer and the trauma that he experienced there. I'm really disappointed that our story was not included in the investigation, and that the lasting effects to these children who are really just being put in there for compliance and behavior reasons, that it damages them. Some kids may need a separation, some kids may need a timeout, but the training in prevention and the documentation and the follow through. And I had to bring my child to the nurse once, not the nurse, I'm sorry, they didn't have my child checked out by the school nurse after he was restrained. And I kept asking for the nurse report. They never produced one because he never saw the nurse. I had brought him to the doctor because he had fingernail gouge marks in his shoulder, and it's documented. There's pictures. No one ever investigated our story. I feel like it's going by the wayside, and I just wanted to make a brief comment. I'm sorry, it wasn't brief. I apologize. I'll stop. But I felt that the report did not align with our truth. And I have 2 children who were both diagnosed with PTSD from the practices that were in place right up until last year. And I don't know if that's what they plan on moving forward with. But ever since my child started his new school about 6 months ago, he's never been restrained. They prevent everything. The teachers are trauma informed. And I'm not saying that every kid needs that in that environment with that school, but something at Fort River isn't working. And I don't want that to go into the new school. And my kids made me promise that I would call and say something, because they don't want other kids to experience what they did. And we want the teachers to have more training in prevention and follow through in documentation, and follow through with nurses' visits after they put hands on children. And that's all. I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry I went over.
There's no one else with a raised hand.
Deb, I think you're muted.
The
I'd like to know
principal
what-
of Croker Farm School.
Okay,
Hello, my name is Alicia Lopez. I'm the
now that one we played last time. So I guess we do not. Oh, yes. Sorry, let me just, I thought we had one from earlier today. Yeah, no. I guess that was an old one. Bear with me just one more minute, and so I want to be absolutely sure. Yes, there are no other voicemail messages, so I'm going to close public comment. Um, I guess it's been a while since I put together an agenda and I neglected the school committee announcements, but I'm gonna, I think it's perfectly adequate for Sarah to make a comment here, since she was the one who suggested it.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I just want the public to know that 4 of the committee members, so Andrew, Bridget, Laura Jane, and I toured the new school this afternoon. We were given a tour by Allison Estes. It was a site visit. We did not discuss any business. We mostly walked around just amazed by how beautiful the place is. So I want the public to know that. I would say that we did learn one thing that is relevant to the concerns about the blue rooms. So if you would like me to relay that, I will.
Let's wait for that section of the agenda, please.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Our next our next part of the agenda is a new position. It's a dual language program, dual language and multilingual education liaison. The reason that it is coming before us, it's a new policy as of June 1st. If there are new positions or positions that have been unfilled for over a year, that comes in front of the school committee. So attached to the agenda is a description of the job, as well as an overview or a list of positions that are staff positions, the types of positions.
Excuse me, Deb, can you speak up?
I'm sorry,
Can you speak up or get closer? Thank you.
is that better? So attached to the agenda is the relevant information, is the job description, several documents, one memo from Dr. Z, and a list of budgeted positions with types and titles from Human Resources. So with that, I think I will turn this over to Dr. Z and or Jennifer Ortiz.
Good
Sorry.
evening, everyone. I thank you for allowing us to bring this back forward in front of the Amherst School Committee. I know that this was brought up at a joint meeting, and now we have to present it separately. One of the key things, in speaking with the chair, there were some questions at the last meeting, and I want to highlight the differences or what we did. So we did update the job description attached, removing the percentages. That was a leftover in terms of, and where that came from is how it is actually identified in the budget. I know there were some questions that Deb explained. And so one of the key questions that I want to highlight instead of to make this presentation different from the last is how does this, or the question that I was posed was, how is this position different from that of the MLE administrator? That's the one held by Celia Sankowski. Some of the key overarching responsibility is that this individual is the MLE administrator, sits at a district office. It is more of a district level leadership and cannot be replaced by school level support. There is often a much deeper need for school level support when it comes to our English learners and our bilingual programs. And so the district-wide administrator, which is Celia, is responsible for dual language programming, English learner programming, bilingual tutors, our interpreter and translation services, district level programming, planning, identifying funding, working across like our bilingual hub, program monitoring, assessment and compliance responsibilities, professional development. So that is the evaluation, the administrator also is responsible for evaluations of our English learner our ELL teachers, and would be responsible for, I believe, evaluation of this position. So that is the broader scope. The liaison provides teacher support and coaching. She assists with direct student testing, or he or she, whoever is identified, conducts and supports grade level meetings, classroom follow-up, and communication between the school and the district. So the liaison would extend the capacity of the overarching administrator rather than duplicate that person's role. This is more of a teachers who work with multilingual learners often need more support that cannot wait for a district level meeting. They need someone direct and on site to provide whether coaching or professional development. A liaison presents that in schools and participates in those team meetings to allow us to provide the best services to our students. In terms of professional development follow-up, they provide professional development alone does not guarantee implementation. There needs to be an opportunity for follow-through through classroom walkthroughs, through providing that, closing the gap in terms of instructional feedback. And if we don't have a school level support, we are actually digging a deeper gap for supports in terms of our recent, well, I think 2 years ago, we were cited by DESE around how we implement our MLE programs, our English learner supports. And so this position is critical. They also work with MPAC. One of the key things that I was also asked was around the budgeting. And the fact that the position, I stated in my memorandum that it was identified in the budget. However, what occurred was there were actually percents. Shannon is on to kind of explain that as well. So Shannon, if you could join in terms of how it is identified within the budget. It was 2 previous positions, but we took it and streamlined it into one. So we took the 2.5 positions and created one singular 1.0 MLE liaison in trying to streamline services to our teachers and staff. Deb, I don't know if you want me to stop now to give committee members an opportunity to ask questions, and the team is here to provide support.
Yeah, I'm going to call on Sarah.
Thanks, Dr. Z. So there are 2, this is a job with 2 main responsibilities. Can you explain whether the functions in each have been carried out by other people in other positions, or these functions have not been provided and are needed? I don't understand if some people have been, their workloads have been unreasonable, and so now some work is shifting onto a new hire in a new position.
I think Tanya can best expand, because I think what happened is there was like a 0.5 of a position and a 0.2, and they were sitting with 2 separate individuals when actually they should be aligned into one position. It kind of overlapped. But Tanya, you could expand on that further.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So there used to be the MLE administrator, and then a portion, there was 0.2 for an impact person that did some of the work there, and some biliteracy coordination. And then there was, can you hear okay?
Yes.
No. And then there was also a 0.5 person that helped at the school level. So what happened was that even with the administrator, there was not an opportunity to give some of the necessary coordination or follow through for secondary, because a lot of the focus at the time was built around making sure we build up the dual language program and paying attention to what's happening there at the elementary level. And then once we have, so fast forward to, this is my third year. So as Celia started, what we noticed was we had to make sure that we got cited for having secondary without curriculum. This was the DESI review that happened. So she was very attentive to what were our findings in the DESI review. And she was doing some work more with secondary as well as elementary. And it's just that role is, you have to do all of it. You can't just pay attention to one grade level. And so what we did was we took the 50% that was happening for the teacher that had the split staff or the split FTE and the impact and the biliteracy coordination and put it together so that we can actually have a streamlined process where we're making sure that all things are getting attended to. So there were parts of the DESI review where we did well and then other parts we didn't. So, but we have to really pay attention to all of it. We don't have the luxury of just focusing on the dual language program. And so making sure that we can cover everything is where we wanted to really fill out this role to make sure that we don't have things falling through the gaps.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? Andrew, I don't. Andrew, are you just gonna jump in if you, because I don't see a hand for you. All right.
I'm okay. I don't have any questions.
I have a question. This was very helpful. I'm used to in the budget book seeing sort of this play out in the budget book. So is this development subsequent to the drafting of that book? Because, you know, in the, I guess the top portion, and I guess Shannon will probably be the one to speak to this. The top portion is the adjustments. I can't remember the name of it. But then there's the ads and the reductions.
Hello. So the part that you're referring to is the ads and cuts page. This was not a position that we're adding or that was reduced, so you will not see it on that page. The FTE was already built into that budget because we had pieces of people doing this work already, but those people are no longer here. So we're combining those FTEs to make this position, but it was never an add to the budget.
Okay, so my follow-up would be, my understanding then would be, this is essentially a 0.3 ad, and that the 0.2 and the 0.5 were already people who are work that people were doing. Is that accurate?
I don't believe so.
So, sorry. So,
So the biliteracy coordinator, hi Deb, hi everyone, good evening. The biliteracy coordinator position over the years just grew.
sorry, Jen needs to talk a little bit. She's having some speaker issues. Come closer.
Come closer, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I apologize because I'm having some internet issues. But the biliteracy coordinator, did the impact and biliteracy coordination part of the work over the years, that position, the hours grew. And so they were actually doing 20 hours a week, which for a committee action position is 50%. So, and it was budgeted for, and it was there. That person is no longer doing that role any longer. So that's where that additional 50% comes from. And then the 50% was from someone who was doing it split ELL teacher and MLE coordinator, ELL coordinator, I think is what it was called. But the biliteracy impact coordinator was at 20 hours a week.
I'm still really slow. I'm so sorry. I'm just really trying to get at.
So there were.
Does this person provide services to our students that we weren't able to, or is this really just an administrative structure having to do with who was there before and who is coming in?
So best way to form this is they're going to provide services to our teachers who will also be supporting our students. And then we'll be providing district level support in terms of testing and assessments that'll be administered. And we took 3 part-time positions and brought them into one position. So all of these different percentages were broken across the budget and we combined them into one.
The real reason I'm asking is anecdotally, I've heard that what we're expecting from our MLE administrators a lot between the administration of the dual language program and supporting the students or teachers in that area. So all I'm really trying to do is understand, is this an enhancement or is this just a reframing of what we already have in place? It is not.
It is reframing to meet that need. So
Okay.
it's not just what we have in place, but what you're asking is reframing to meet that need. We had multiple individuals doing pockets of it, and we're reframing it into one position to meet that gap and that need, because the administrator was doing the job of 3, and the schools weren't able to get the consistent support that was needed. Now we're trying to ensure that the schools and the teachers get the consistent support that's needed to support our students.
Thank you. Sarah, did you have anything else? Okay. So I am willing to entertain a motion.
I don't have the that language in
Yeah,
front
I
of me
did.
anymore. Is it, I approve?
I move
Maybe
to-
Dr. Z has it.
I can do it. I move to approve that the Amherst School Committee approve the position as presented in the dual language and multilingual educational liaison description attached to the agenda.
Second.
Deb moves. Bridget seconds. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Sarah, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bridget, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Deb votes yes. Has Laura Jean?
I sure
Laura
am.
Jean-
Yes.
Okay, can you give me the time where you joined? I should put that on my notes.
Yeah, let me look when I texted Andrew. Hold on. I think 7:07.
7:07 p.m. Okay. Laura Jane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next order of business. Student safety and well-being, Attorney Sankey report on his investigation into caregiver reports around restraint and seclusion in the Amherst School District. The report is attached. It's been redacted. There was an appendices that were attached that both Attorney Sankey and our attorney of record for the school committees recommended that those appendices that dealt with individual situations for individual students not be released to the school committee because there's enough identifying information in them to be able to figure out what the individual students involved. So the part that is on the agenda is the main part without those appendices and with witnesses' names redacted, also upon advice of district council. Because the report references the CPAC letter, I also attached the public portion of that letter, not the testimonials, but the recommendations and requests and statements. So that's also on the agenda. So Dr. Z, would you like to? Yeah, go ahead.
I wrote my notes down to keep it, so bear with me. In the words of Maya Angelou, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And so this speaks directly to what growth and change is required from us as a district. Tonight, I want to speak about the release of the independent investigative results. Before I continue, I want to be clear about the boundaries of tonight's discussion. To protect the confidentiality of students, families, and staff, neither the investigator nor the district staff are authorized to discuss individual situations or provide information that could identify a student or staff member. We understand that the members of the community may have questions about specific cases, but those matters cannot be discussed publicly. Tonight's presentation will focus on the overall investigations, its findings, and the work we are doing next. When these concerns were brought forward to me, no one asked the district, and I repeat, no one asked the district to conduct an investigation. In fact, CPAC representatives later clarified that their letter was intended to share the experiences of families and help inform revisions to our policies and practices. However, as superintendent, I made the decision that the concerns as presented could not be ignored. And I made this decision in consultation with our legal counsel who supports us in student cases. The accounts described experiences involving some of our most vulnerable students. They raised questions about student safety, family communication, staff training, and whether our practices were consistent with state regulations. Given the seriousness of those concerns, I did not believe it would be responsible of us as a district to simply acknowledge the letter and move forward without a deeper and independent review. I authorized the investigation because taking concerns seriously requires more than saying that we are listening. It requires us to examine our practices, put the mirror in front of us and review the facts, and be willing to confront whatever the findings may reveal. And Attorney Sankey was identified as our investigator, and he reviewed the district's policies, training materials, documentation, reporting procedures, restraint records, and timeout practices. He also interviewed staff members, CPAC representatives, and caregivers. At one point in the investigation, the school committee opened it up for the full community to contact, and so Attorney Sankey extended the investigation timeline to allow for this. What he found highlights the district's policies and documented practices comply with state regulations. He found about staff training, focus on prevention, and trauma-informed practices. Our restraints were documented. The report concluded that the district appropriately balanced the need to reduce dysregulated behaviors and minimize the impacts of restraints within our responsibility to protect the safety of students. These findings are important because they establish the district's practices were rooted in compliance. However, compliance does not mean that every situation is the same or that every student and family will experience an incident in the same way. Each student is different. Each case is different. The circumstances leading to an intervention, the needs of the student, the response of staff, and the impact on student, family, and staff must all be considered individually. What this report highlights for me is that our system must continue to grow as the landscape of education and around the student needs and behavioral supports change. The needs of our students are changing consistently, daily. Our understanding of trauma, regulation, and behavior needs to grow and is continuing to grow. State requirements are also changing. Our practices must continue to grow within or around them. The report speaks to the district's compliance at the time of the investigation. It does not fully speak to what we are doing next. As we continue our work, we are sending a district team to training in our CPS training developed by Ross Green. We have engaged with representatives from UCARO to explore additional approaches that focus on comfort, prevention, trauma-informed care, and reducing the need for restraint. We are reviewing the design of and use of our behavioral support and timeout areas, including the possibility of installing cameras in appropriate areas. Any consideration of cameras will require a thought review of student privacy, our legal requirements, safety, and how recordings will be accessed and used. We will continue reviewing not just our procedures, training, and documentation, but working within our data and communication practices, including looking at our learning spaces to ensure alignment with the amended Massachusetts restraint regulations that took effect on August 17, 2026. As a district, we do not deny that restraints can have lasting effects on students and staff. We recognize that even when a restraint is used during an emergency to prevent serious physical harm, the experience can be frightening, upsetting, or traumatic for everyone, students and staff alike. That is why restraint is not our first step. It's an emergency response of last resort. Our first steps must and will continue to remain in prevention, relationship building, de-escalation, understanding student needs, and proactive interventions. So tonight's presentation is not about justifying district actions. It's about making sure that our practices are rooted in compliance so that we have a clear and responsible foundation for which we will grow our district upon. We must be able to hold more than one truth at the same time. Our staff may be required to respond during an emergency to protect a student or others from serious harm. At the same time, we must continue doing everything possible to prevent a student from reaching that point of crisis. And we do. And we acknowledge the impact when an emergency intervention occurs. Compliance is our starting point, but it is not the end of our responsibility as a district. I would like to thank CPAC and the caregivers who brought these concerns forward. Raising difficult concerns is not always easy, but it is necessary. Their willingness to speak up created an opportunity for us as a district to reflect and to look closely at our practices and provide our community with an independent review of facts. We take all concerns and complaints seriously. That does not mean every concern will result in a finding that a policy or regulation was violated. It means that concerns will be heard, reviewed, and addressed with the attention that they deserve, such as we did this one. We are growing as a district, and growth requires us to acknowledge what is working while also being honest about where we can improve. It requires us to listen without becoming defensive and examine our practices when doing so may be uncomfortable, and remain open to change. If any caregiver or parent has a concern about their child's experience in our district, I encourage them to contact their child's principal or myself in the office of the superintendent. We want our families to feel heard, supported, and confident that their concerns will be taken seriously. Our responsibility is to ensure that every student is safe, supported, and treated with dignity and respect. That responsibility remains at the center of all our work and will continue to guide us as we listen, learn, and grow together. At this point, I hand it over to you, Deb, and to Attorney Sankey.
So I'd like to thank everybody and Attorney Sankey in particular for being able to come together on short order. The report was given to the school committee earlier this week, and it was important to me and as my understanding of the work that the committee has done to bring it forward as quickly as possible. So that's why this meeting, although brought together not in a regular meeting, was important, I think, for the committee to continue this discussion of this important work that we've been examining this past year, and in particular this past spring. So Attorney Sankey, we exchanged some emails. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. I had asked you because you had asked what context, and both the public and the school committee would benefit from hearing the charge and the context in which your investigation took place, in addition to the findings of your report, if you're
Sure.
able to.
Sure. I'll give you a 15-second background just so the committee has a sense where I'm coming from. I am an attorney by practice. I actually retired 2 years ago, but haven't done a very good job staying in retirement. I was a special education attorney for 25 years. I've worked with primarily throughout my career, through the later part of my career, with children with disabilities. I have been doing investigations for school districts for a number of years. And I spent 9 years on the school committee. So I certainly understand the responsibilities that this committee has and appreciate the decisions that you need to make. I was asked to do the investigation back in February after the CPAC submitted the letter to the superintendent. I think Dr. Z has covered a lot of what I would have talked about. So let me, touch on what my task was. My understanding of what I was asked to do was to evaluate the district's practices as it related to restraints and timeouts to determine compliance with regulations. Okay, and that came from both the CPAC's letter and from my subsequent discussions with the CPAC. And then there's been some discussion about the 7 caregivers. Part of my report did address anonymous. The caregivers were anonymous, but they were identifiable. And to the extent that I was able to, given the constraints of anonymity, I did address in the report each of those incidents for the purpose of the school taking a look at those. So how did I do it? I met with the CPAC representatives on 2 occasions. I met with 3 of the parents who had previously chosen to be anonymous. So I know that the CPAC reached out and told people that I was willing to speak with them. 3 families or 3 sets of parents did speak with me. I met with the elementary school principals and staff members. I reviewed training materials dating back several years. reviewed school policies, compared them with Massachusetts regulations, and I reviewed volumes of documents relating to restraints and timeouts in the two elementary schools, Wildwood and Fort River. So I believe that I have looked at every restraint report from 2024-25 and 25-26 through March of 2026. That was the point where I started compiling, data. And so you have an overview of essentially a year in 3/4 of a school year. My overall findings, your superintendent has indicated them. I found that the restraint reports and the timeout logs were in compliance with regulations. I did not find any instances in which restraints and timeouts were used for an improper purpose. An improper purpose for restraints include for discipline, for punishment, for property destruction, for mere disruption of the classroom. I didn't find any instances in which restraints were used for those purposes. And let me say where I'm getting this information is, so whenever a restraint is used, the school has to complete a very significant report that has a lot of information in it. And that's what I went through for each restraint to see what was done to try to prevent the restraint, what were the precipitating factors. So I knew in each instance what the behavior was that caused the staff to take the action that it took. Now, again, I'm relying upon the accuracy of those reports. And I understand that some people may disagree with findings. I am looking at, I don't remember, I didn't count how many, but certainly short of 100. But I looked at many restraints, and when I am making my findings, I'm making them based upon the accuracy that is of the information that is recorded in those restraints. I can't go back. I wasn't there. These were over 2 years. So that's the genesis of the information. But I did find that the restraints were always prompted by safety concerns due to aggressive behaviors, self-harm, and to a large extent to prevent elopement. There were many that were done for kids that were running away, that were getting close to the street, things of that nature. So I can go over the restraint data if that's helpful. It's in the report. It's probably maybe more lengthy than you want to hear, but I'm prepared to talk about what I found for each elementary school if you would like me to. Oh, sure.
Mute them.
Yeah, that would be helpful. One of my questions has to do with the scope. Which of the schools that you were investigating? You
Mhm.
mentioned 3 parents, but then there was some question both in public comment and in the document itself about which caregivers were interviewed.
There were 3 caregivers that voluntarily chose to speak with me. The schools that I looked at were Fort River for 2024 and 25, and Wildwood for 24-25, and then both schools for 25-26. I am not aware of any restraint documentation for any other elementary school. And I think that even the CPAC letter, when you look in the back, it indicates no restraints in those schools for those years. So there was nothing for me to look at. There were no documents from those schools. So the only 2 schools that I have an understanding based upon the documentation, but your own documentation, is that it was Fort River and Wildwood.
So those 3 caregivers were from those 2 schools.
That is my recollection. I did hear tonight the one said that they were in a separate school, and that may well be. I'm certainly not disputing a parent saying where they were. I did not have any data from that school. So if you look at even the CPAC report, there were no reports from the district in regard to that school. So is it possible that there was one in another school? I suppose it is. It's not something that I am aware of. If there was, there may be one. While you were talking about something that I didn't know anything about, I was thumbing as quickly as I could through my notes to see if I could refresh my memory as to what that may be. And again, I'm constrained from not talking about a
Right.
particular caregiver, but I do now know which one it is. And I'm just trying to be careful. So I won't say any more about that. So that is part of the difficulty. And you know, as an attorney who's represented parents for many years, I certainly respect and appreciate, you know, the desire not to put your kids front and center on this by name. And I respect that. And I've done everything I could to respect that through this process. But it also does limit to some extent what it is that I can do. Now, the three parents that I spoke with, if you were able to read the reports that I provided, I addressed each of their complaints, and I made specific findings. So it saddens me to hear another comment made that my report didn't reflect the experience of some of the families. The reality is I only spoke with three of the families, and I could not reflect their experiences in my main report. No one else came forward. I understood that the committee reached out to the community and gave them my contact information. I did not hear from anyone else. So I have based, you know, my findings broadly, but certainly have taken into consideration the three families that spoke with me and that spoke with me very earnestly, with a great deal of emotion, which I understand, you know, where they're coming from. But my approach here was systemic, to look at what has gone on in these two particular schools, and to come back and to tell you what I found. So I don't know if that helps, but so I'll go, you know, real broadly. You know, Fort River in 24-25 had 24 restraints during the full school year involving 8 students. Wildwood had 39 restraints involving 7 students. One student had 22 of the 39 restraints. So that skews your numbers. If you look at 39, you're thinking, is it 39 students? No, there was one student that was restrained significantly. That raises different issues in terms of, you know, is the placement proper, you know, things like that we don't need. I certainly don't want to get into, but those were things that I also looked at, were the number of restraints per student. Every case that I looked at in 24-25 were all for permissible reasons, meaning that I found that there was something that fell within the regulations that said under these circumstances restraint was permissible. They were all the restraints were performed by a trained staff with an observer. They were all of predominantly short duration, meaning less than 5 minutes. The reports all detailed de-escalation efforts on each occasion. I know that the CPAC and some of the parents raised concerns that they had not been properly notified of restraints. I found that of the 63 restraints done within the 2 elementary schools in that school year, 61 of the 63, that the notifications went to the parents on the same day, and the others went on the second day. So the requirement is 24 hours. I certainly found that they were all within the time frame. The statistics for 25-26, now remembering this is September through March, so this is it's not an apples to apples comparison, but at Fort River, there were 22 restraints involving 5 students. Wildwood, there were 13 restraints involving 5 students. Again, I found all of them for permissible reasons, all trained staff, all of predominantly short duration, with great detail as to the de-escalation efforts detailed on each occasion. On the same time, I found that the parental notices were within the guidelines. So that's what I took out of, you know, this high of documents that I poured through, you know, whatever day, and kept this, you know, statistics as best as I can. I know the CPAC talked a lot about training, and when they met with me, I met with them on 2 occasions with multiple members. Yeah, I thought, from my perspective, they were productive meetings. I came out of there with a greater understanding of what their concerns were. I did find, however, that their concerns that the staff were not focusing on preventive measures rather than de-escalation were, at least based upon the curriculum and the documents that I reviewed, were not accurate. I interviewed the district trainers, I interviewed the principals, I reviewed the safety care curriculum, and I asked them to give me the presentations, and I probably didn't limit it enough because one day I got this many PowerPoint presentations, I think going back 10 years, and I found predominantly that the focus on all of the PowerPoints was based upon the prevention of dysregulation. In fact, when the safety care training, 7 out of the 8 chapters are focused on, and that's what your staff is trained when they're probably going through it now in August or September. 7 out of the 8 chapters are focused on preventing dysregulation. Your principals all stressed to me that was what they were focused on, was trying to make sure that students didn't get to the point where they needed to be de-escalated. So again, I wasn't in the classes. I don't know what was said in the classes, but I have the PowerPoints that were prepared. I am operating under the presumption that they presented what they prepared. And from my perspective, it more than adequately was focused upon trying to prevent the behaviors that would lead to restraints or time. There was concern expressed by the CPAC about reporting. I touched on that. I found that the reporting, at least based upon the records, were all done within the timeframes. To the extent that I was able to, I looked at the practices as reflected in the paper, and the papers that I was given. Again, you have trained staff. They were all involved in the responses. The focus was the timeouts they understood, they reflected. The timeouts were only used as a last resort when de-escalation is not successful. There was an understanding that seclusion is unlawful, that it can only be used in certain circumstances with certain exceptions. So I guess overall, as indicated in my report, I did find that your district is in compliance with the regulations. I looked at the regulations over the past several years. I looked at your policies, but was also reflective that in August, as you all know, the regulations changed. So I wasn't measuring the district's performance prospectively. I was saying, as we were when I wrote the report, as of the day of the report, were you in compliance over these 2-year periods? I did not go back more than 2 years. You would not have wanted me to put the time in to go back, 5 and 6 and 7 years. I thought that when you think about the turnover in staff and things of that nature, I thought that the 2 years would be a reflective picture of your district. I did not find evidence that practices were focused on behavioral compliance at the expense of students' emotional needs. The folks that I talked to all brought that up even before I did. I did not find any instances where a student was placed in, timeout because they were non-compliant or, as punishment. I did find that there was an appropriate focus on de-escalation, and it's a difficult area. I can tell you from someone who's practiced in the area as a representative of students, but I've also been a school committee member. I've represented school districts. This is a really hard area to make decisions, to do that the right way, because you have my report. I think you have a page or so where I recognized all of the bad things that happened from restraints. And I don't think there's any question about that. I certainly don't doubt that. I don't think that any student can go through the experience of being restrained and come out of it and not have an impression, an impact, and a negative one. And I reflect and I respect that. I recognize that. But as an attorney, I also recognize the reality that no matter how hard you train and how well you train and how hard you work, there are going to be instances, particularly in the elementary school, where kids are maturing and acting out in ways that perhaps older kids don't. that there are going to be behaviors that put the student at risk, that put themselves at risk. And the school has to have some way to address that. You know, when I think of occasions, you know, my cases that I've had where you have kids that are headbanging to the point where they're, you know, concussions, hitting themselves on the head with a radiator, on hitting their heads on a radiator. Those are things that, you know, the staff has to have the tools to step in, because even if that student's parent is on the side of saying, I don't want my child restrained, if that child has a concussion, if that child, you know, is in the hospital, you know, if some dire physical things happen to that child, there's also going to be criticism of the school for not presenting it. So you are really caught in between two really, really important considerations, you know, avoiding harm to the child from the restraint, but also avoiding harm to the child from running into traffic, from you know, hitting the kid next to them or hitting a teacher. So I came out of this with the impression that, at least over the time that I looked at it, is that the school had balanced that. There are many restraints. Proportionately, you know, I don't know what I didn't divide it up by a number of students, but there are certainly a number of restraints in the elementary schools. In my experience, does not surprise me. I've done these investigations before. I don't think you'll find too many elementary schools that have none. And so I do think that I came out of this with the belief that, as Dr. Z said, I think things can always be done better. But I think you are in compliance. Was I was impressed, to be honest. I was impressed with the documentation that I went through. Again, I'm presuming that it was accurate, and frankly, there's no reason for it to be inaccurate, because I don't think anyone ever would have predicted that some lawyer was going to sit down there with all their documents and compare them. So I think your staff was professional. The people that I dealt with were very open with me. And I'll say the same thing about the parents that I spoke with, the CPAC members. I think everyone comes from a really good place, wanting things to be as good as they possibly can be. So I will leave it at that. I hope that, you know, in combination with the superintendent's presentation in mind, I think you get a sense of where I came from, and I'm certainly happy to answer any specific questions anyone has.
You're on mute.
Dr. Z, I've seen your hand go up and down. I will get to that. I wanted to ask the committee if you have any specific questions for Attorney Sankey here.
Did I fall out of the Zoom? Am I still there?
Sarah's hand is up.
I don't see you, Sarah. Are you there?
Yeah, her hand is up. She's not in the
Oh,
Zoom, but her hand was
yeah,
up.
I'm sorry. I'll have to, I've been
Okay.
in the room.
Th-
Can I
this
go ahead,
works.
Deb?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's a question for Mr. Sankey. Thank you for that presentation and the work. About the appendices that we cannot see, and I understand that, have the caregivers whose concerns are addressed separately in the separate appendices, if I understand right, have they seen that information? Will they get to?
No, unfortunately, that information is compiled and confidential because it identifies students and situations. So if you're asking if they can see their specific one because of how
Yes, their own child's, yeah.
I would have to consult with legal to see how that would work. But as of right now, no one has seen appendices because it clearly identifies who the caregivers are and who the students are.
I had had a conversation, Dr. Z, in general about investigations back with Attorney Terry. So maybe you and he can have a conversation, because that would be a continuation of the question that I had asked him.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Attorney Sankey?
Bridget has her hand up.
Bridget.
I had two questions. The first one is just in the data in the data overall, I'm wondering if the cases where students self-refer are included or not included in that data. Like these are seclusions that are staff-driven seclusions, the ones in your data. Is that correct?
I wouldn't use the term seclusions or staff-driven seclusions. I would be more focusing on timeouts. So if you have, and so the data that I just read were related to restraints. Okay, so restraints and timeouts are different. The school is not required, although you do, to your credit, you do keep timeout logs. But the restraint information the information that I just gave you related to restraints. The timeout information that the district kept would not refer to a self-referral. So maybe I can explain the difference. So if you have a student who, for a reason within the regulations, they can go into the timeout room, that information is reflected in a timeout log by your school. If a student just says, I'm having a bad day and I want to use this room, I want to go in that room to be quiet so everybody leaves me alone, to do whatever, to do whatever, those would not, to my knowledge, those would not be reflected, because that's a choice of it that a student is going to reflect.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you. I noticed that there was some interchange in the text between those two categories. I wanted to
Yes, I mean, and sometimes what can happen is that if you can have a student that's involved in a restraint and the data is kept in regard to the restraint, and then perhaps the restraint could end in the hallway or the classroom, and it wouldn't then progress to a timeout. Or if the behavior could continue, and then then you would have that student, in the timeout room. So they're not mutually exclusive. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. And thank you for the report overall. Like, I found it really thorough and easy to follow. And I know I can't see the second part of it, so I'm probably missing some context. But one question that came to my mind was that overall it seemed like your finding was that the practices were compliant with the law, which of course now Massachusetts has agreed that law wasn't sufficient, but still that we were compliant at the time. But then I wondered, are we sure that there aren't individual civil rights violations when we have like one student held down for 25 minutes or 27 minutes, and it happens to be like the same student getting restrained 7 times, 6 times? Like, so I wondered what your findings were in that regard.
I didn't make any specific findings in regard to civil rights violations. None were alleged, but I would say, just broadly answering your question, that a restraint that's done properly within a reasonable time frame based upon the circumstances would not amount to a civil rights violation. If you're in compliance, then I would say by definition it would not be a civil rights violation. Now, you raised the issue about a student being restrained multiple times. I don't, in my opinion, we're not talking technically about a civil rights violation. You may be talking about a student who would have greater rights to a different placement under the IDEA. Because if I were representing that student, I would be making the argument that if you need to restrain a student that many times, then that student needs to have a more restrictive program. But that's not, you certainly didn't ask me to go in and do findings as to whether placements were appropriate. But that's what would stick out to me, is that if you have, and again, I wish I could answer your question further. I do know that the district has resolved some of the things that I just said to you. Let me just leave it at that. The district is not unaware of what I just said.
No, that's perfect. I think that was one of the concerns that came up in reading what you wrote, is like, how do we more speedily move through our system towards a more appropriate solution than just repeatedly, holding a child down, especially those lengths of time and then the same child over and over. I think it starts to really concern me, but thank you.
Certainly.
Laura Jane, let's focus at least at this part on questions for Attorney Sankey.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Sankey. I'm one of the school committee members. I'm just remote, so sorry. And I missed the beginning. I apologize.
No.
Thank you for the report. I guess my question, I was trying to write down what you were saying just now, and I sort of lost the thread a little bit. And so I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that it's very clear that you found that our district was in compliance with the rules and the laws and the policies as they were at that time, right? And of course, now we know they've tightened up a little bit, but I guess just going back to the thing that Bridget raised, I just, when I think about the size of these children, like they're so small, the idea that that one child would need to be restrained so many times is something that would be like, oh, maybe you should be thinking about moving this child out of the district. And in your experience, is that something that the school would be raising with the family earlier, or would it be like, where is that line? Like, if that's happened so many times, I think you know what I'm asking, right? I hope.
Yeah, I do, and I mean, I'm stepping a little bit out of my lane as your investigator, but I can try to answer your question as someone who's worked in this field for 25 years. If the district, a change in placement can be initiated by the district, it can be initiated by the family. Many times, and in fact, gosh, I keep almost slipping back into some of the specific examples that I'm not going to talk about. But there are times when a family may want to do everything they can to keep a student in the district, and therefore there may be more of these types of restraints or timeouts than another family might tolerate. There are times when your recognition, that these are just little people, and you wonder why did they need to be restrained as many times. A lot of them, as I think I referenced earlier, particularly with this age group, involves elopement. So when you have the student who takes off out the door, off the playground, heads toward the street, things of that nature, a lot of the restraints that I'm seeing are trying to address that. So, I mean, I guess the answer to your question, it can be addressed by either side, and it is based upon a determination as to whether the placement that the child is in is appropriate. And I second what you're saying, is that if I saw that many restraints as an attorney representing a student, I would be coming to the conclusion to say, if this is what's happening on a regular basis, then we need to be looking at a different type of a program.
Thank you. Deb, you're on mute.
Again, there's this clock that chirps and I keep muting it and then it goes back to chirping. I'm going to call myself Sarah briefly, and
It's Andrew has the question. I raised my hand on his behalf. So.
Then Andrew, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Yeah, my one question is, when a classroom is evacuated because a student is dysregulated, is that also considered seclusion?
I would say no, because the student is, presuming that a teacher stays under the new regulations, if a teacher stays in the class, or I say teacher, if a staff member stays in the classroom with that student, or certainly on the threshold, it would not be seclusion. If everyone ran out and closed the door, and the student was in an empty classroom with a closed door, then yes, you don't have to have a seclusion room designated for it to be a seclusion.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I know of instances where the student was in the room with staff and the rest of the class had to leave, and the
Yes.
doors were closed and locked.
But as long as an adult remains in the room with the student, it would not be a seclusion.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
What would it be?
It really wouldn't fall into any of the reportable categories. It basically is just for safety concerns. You're evacuating the other student. The student stays where he or she is, and the staff member remains with the student. Now, it could evolve into something else if the student became, behaviorally, that the staff member had to call your team in to restrain the student or take the student, to a timeout. It could evolve into that, but as initially described, it wouldn't be any of those things.
One of the things that I'm struggling with is a lot of discussion around restraints, which is important. But a lot of the testimonials that I read had to do with timeouts. And
yeah.
So can you help me disaggregate those two parts of your investigation better?
Sure. So I think the way that it was presented, or your restraints and your seclusion, your timeouts are all encompassed within one policy. And so when the CPAC sent its letter, there was reference to restraints. But I agree with you that as I got more involved in it, I found that very little of what they were talking about was restraints. They were also referring to using the term seclusion more than I think fell within the definition. So I think a lot of their concerns, to your point, fell within the area of timeouts. Okay, and so restraints are not based upon a location. Restraint could be in the hallway. It can be on the playground. It can be anywhere where a student's behavior falls within the permissible areas where some sort of a restraint is required. A timeout, I would have, until the question made me think a little bit broader. A timeout is generally in a designated place within a school, although it not need be in a, it doesn't have to have the blue room designation. It could be anywhere. But a timeout is more often is the follow-on to a restraint, but it can be used voluntarily, as someone asked earlier, or it can be a place where the student is placed for their safety, for while they calm, with a staff member on the inside. Did I answer your question?
It does. It does. Yes, thank you. Is there, I mean, I know this is one general report, but there was a Pelham related incident, and it seems like your report did not address anything that may or may not have taken place at Pelham.
I do. Are you referring to the comment that from the parent earlier? Was that Pelham?
I'm referring to my understanding of the interviews that took place. My understanding was there was an interview with a Pelham family.
Point of order, why are we discussing Pelham students?
Because I'm trying to understand the report process. And if there is because the letter was 7 testimonials,
Mm-hmm.
and my understanding of the process was it was an investigation of the concerns as a whole. That's what one of the first things Attorney Sankey said. He said, evaluate the district practices regarding restraints and seclusions. 7 caregivers were identifiable. He spoke with 3 parents. So I'm just trying to understand the process and what was extracted from the process.
So I think as I said, as I was listening to the parents, that was the first time that I realized that there may have been something that was missing. So I scrambled as much as I could to go back to my notes. And I think that is correct, that there is a parent who mentioned that a Pelham related activity. The reason that it would have slipped through, and it's, if I made the mistake, I made the mistake, but the reason that it would have slipped through is because on the back of the CPAC letter, you'll see where it talks about the number of students restrained and on and on. And when you look at Pelham for 24 and 25, there were none there. So when I asked the school district or the district provided, I didn't say to the district, just give me Wildwood and just give me Fort Hill. I said, give me the restraint report. So given the statistics that showed that there were none, the district didn't give me any for Pelham because it sounds like that there weren't any reports. Now, that could be an issue if there was one and I didn't get one. It is not impossible that I missed one of the restraints. And so I do think that parent is correct. As I'm reflecting that someone, said the word Pelham, and that's my fault. I mean, I did not, I don't know your districts and I don't know your schools and I wasn't, thinking I was doing an individual analysis, of each particular school.
Yeah.
So
Can I
I'll take,
clarify?
Yeah, Dr. Z?
Sure. The report was sent over. However, the school years and timeframes, that incident occurred prior to the timeframe that we were looking at, the 2 years. So if we look at school years, we're looking at 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26 up 26 up until March 26 when everything was brought in. That incident occurred outside of the time frame that we were looking at, but we did have the documentation and it was submitted.
Okay, thank you.
okay. So I didn't even know that. So,
Right.
and again, that my direction to the district was, please just give me 2 years. I mean, certainly you didn't want to be
Right.
paying me to go back looking at 3 and 4 and 5 years.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have for you. But certainly we're not done with this portion of our agenda. So Dr. Z had raised her hand on and off while you were speaking. So I'd like to not circle back. I'd like to give her the opportunity to weigh in on what was on her mind at the time or currently.
I didn't write it down, but what I will say is I want to say thank you to Attorney Sankey for providing us this frame. We wanted to focus in, like I stated in the beginning, we wanted to focus in on what was brought in front of us and to see as a district within those timeframes of it occurring, what could we improve upon? So this was not about pointing fingers at or not pointing fingers at ourselves or to just clear ourselves. We are in a transitional period within our district. We were in a transitional period when we received this. These were concerns that were brought forward, and we wanted to analyze and dig deeper. The one thing that I did tell staff when I met with staff, I said, is if this is how you practice and document, continue. I also let them know that in these practices, and as we shift and change, the one thing that they look upon is how we're going to grow, right? I told them, don't focus on the negatives that are going to come forward. Focus on how we take that and we grow from there. How do we move from there as a district and expand our knowledge? And so that's the one thing I want to say. This is not, Attorney Sankey did his part. He looked at the incidents. He told us what occurred, even in the data and his breaking down of the data in the information that was able to go forth to him and to share. We were able as a district to analyze and see things for us to grow upon and to take the recommendations that CPAC sent forward and to look into them. And that's the part that I think is missing in the well, not missing from the conversation, but I wanted to expand in the beginning. And from what I read in the public comment and I heard, that's the part that I think it's the next step. And so the next step is that we are continuing in the commitment of what we have brought forth, but we also needed to sit back and reflect on what occurred, what prompted this, and what could we have done differently. And that's what we are using this for growth.
So somebody write down the time because I'm going to go back to that and write that down as an agenda item on a future on a future school committee meeting, because it is an ongoing discussion. It has been brought to our attention. We have done an investigation, and next steps are definitely an important part of pulling all the pieces together. So I'm going to ask the committee if there's anything more for tonight that they want to address about this particular agenda item. Sarah?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to our visit to Amethyst Brook today.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll ask those others who were there to correct me or add, because we did visit the new blue rooms that are now brown or tan. And right now they are indeed bare. There's nothing in them except the pads on the walls. That's not how they're going to remain. The school, I mean, the teachers are, crazily trying to get their classrooms arranged. The building will open, but I don't know when those rooms will be completely fitted out, but they'll be decorated and there'll be all sorts of calming equipment. And so they're not going to stay like that. Yes, they look very stark, but that's just what the contractors have done. And now the staff will complete equipping them. Does any of you others want to add?
I have Bridget and Laura Jane, but Dr. Z also might have had something to say.
I would
about
like
that.
everyone to no longer refer to them as blue rooms. We are leaning towards the sensory spaces. And also through what I've learned from the designer, there's like bean bags that are supposed to be included in there and some other things that are, I believe, on its way in. I did not get to join the school committee to expand on that, so I'm not sure what occurred today. And I'm hearing your debriefs for the first time, so note that once I hear your debriefs and if you have any questions or concerns, I'll check into it before I respond. But we are leaning towards, as a district, calling them sensory spaces. And we'll see how that feels to staff and to everyone else. But it's not blue rooms. I just want to clarify that.
And not tan either. Okay, Bridget.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit, I think, like you said, about the process, because I think there've been some highs and lows in the process, right? And some places where we could have done better and maybe we can learn from. I was disappointed not with Attorney Sankey, but that the school committee wasn't involved in helping determine the scope of the process, since we had learned so many of the community concerns like well in advance. And I know we were going to have a March meeting and talk about that and have input, and that was canceled. And I guess, it's still so disappointing to see our numbers so high, and so high compared to so many other schools in the state. I know there are other schools that have these high numbers, but they're a fraction of the schools in the state overall, and then we have them. So, and I think the last thing is just those individual students, like we're not succeeding with those individual students when this happens. So those are big avenues for us in terms of growth. And I definitely want to see us delve more into that and get more updates and information about how that's going. But I am really glad to see what Dr. Z mentioned, which was progress on the crosswalk, having the CPS raw screen training, doing the due diligence to move towards Yukuru. And I think the other thing that I'd like to hear more about is like the implementation of JKA and what has been proceduralized so far in terms of that policy, because that proceduralization had the August 17th deadline. So those are the things on my mind.
I'm going to take a moment to jump in and say, hey, I created those new Google forms to request agenda items. So, Bridget, it sounds like you can just fire one of those off anytime. But yes, thank you for the next agenda item. Laura Jane?
Oh, I think Sarah is ahead of me.
Sorry, I didn't put it down.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So the building is extraordinarily beautiful. It looks magical. The students and all the staff are going to be thrilled to be in there. I mean, there's no question about that. And I will say one really incredible thing that I had not expected was the integration of nature into the building. Like you could every place you're standing, you can see windows that look out into trees, even when you're standing in the hallway. So that was really wonderful. I think that's really healthy. And the landscapers have been doing incredible work despite our drought. And we got to see the library, and we got to see, you might want us not to call them blue rooms, but right now they're still just brown rooms because there's nothing in there at all. I will say there is a door left on one of the rooms. I know Allison promised that was going to come off. I'm just going to name it because I wanted to make sure everyone knew that there was still a door. I think it's second floor. Am I right about the second floor? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that door comes off. And when we were looking at the rooms, Andrew also pointed out that the doorways are not covered by any kind of padding, and so it may be worth having CPAC think about what that could, whether that is important to do, especially in the one that has sort of two little rooms right attached to each other with an open space. Which sounds like it's going to be really nice. They've got a nice plan for decorations and things like that, although that brown is not my favorite color and it doesn't go well with the rest of the building. So just to name the door, that's what I wanted to do. But it was really incredible space, beautiful.
Madam Chair, Deb, can I ask that the comments of the committee members, seeing as how this is the first time I'm hearing of the debrief, be sent to me so that I can be clear on what is being asked, and then I can rebut on some of the situations and instances.
Would you like me to gather them together in a Google Sheet, or would you, okay, so folks, can you just send me any debriefs that you would like Dr. Z to know or address in an email, and I will do my best to get those together in one Google Sheet and share it with her. I would like to say regarding, and Dr. Z and I have spoken about this, regarding those rooms and the evolution of their design. In January of this year is when the pieces came together in my head that the design of the Amethyst building preceded the change in regulations and subsequent efforts to align that or the design in the outfitting of the rooms with the school committee's intentions and DESE regulations went a little sideways. And during the elementary school buildings committee meeting, which is a town meeting, the designers did say that the ante rooms were supposed to not be padded, and now we have pads. So one of the concerning issues, I think, all around is what was a contentious or concerning issue originally, whether or not it really did make sense to have these rooms with pads in them on all floors, and how many should we have. So we went from having 4 rooms to 7 rooms, and there's a lot of work that we need to do for repair, right? I'm not going to say students, but I want to say there's repair work that needs to take place. And I think that's our next step. And unfortunately, 7 rooms with pads is not the step in the direction we want to go. I know Principal Estes is committed to making that. And again, this is not surprising, Dr. Z, because we had this conversation separately or already. Principal Estes is committed to making those rooms, I think, align with the Oasis room from Wildwood. Maybe I'm speaking a little too much out of turn here, but I think there's an alignment that needs to take place, and I think we have work to do. And we recognize that and we own that, and that's what I'm saying. We do not want 7 seclusion rooms, and certainly the fact that there is an unpadded part has to do with the removing of the doors, which was the directive of this committee. And that came way after those rooms were designed and completed. So we are going to have to keep revisiting this. And that's all I have. So I'm ready. Any last thoughts? It's 8:23. Any last thoughts? I'd like to end sooner rather than later and let some folks go home who don't need to be in the agenda planning part. Dr. Z, yeah.
I'd like to take some
Do
time.
you mind if I step away?
Yeah, I
Jamie,
just
with
wanted
anything?
to say, I wanted to thank you, Attorney
Thank you.
Sankey, for
I
attending.
told you I was on a school committee. I remember the midnight meeting, so I was
Yeah.
just making sure that
I
was
just
getting
wanted to say thank you.
my
Attorney Sankey,
pleasure.
for attending, and also thank the staff of ARPS and the parents of ARMS, for just trusting us to do our jobs and due diligence and participating, and for coming forward when they felt like something they needed to advocate for their children, and that's their roles. And so thank you to the parents. Let's continue to advocate and work together. Thank you, Attorney Sankey. And thank you to our staff, our trainers, and to Joanne Smith, just for making sure we had all of our paperwork and our ducks in a row each year to be able to report accurately to DESE, but also to be able, when Attorney Sankey asked for us to have over 2 years of documentation, we were able to adequately put it forward. And that comes through leadership, that comes through supports, and that comes through us all working together as parents, communities, and an educational system for our children. So thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Right. Bridget, you had your hand up briefly.
I'll put it back down now that Attorney Sankey has left. I was just wondering if there was I was trying to understand, but I think like if there was a parent left out of the report or not, and then if that could be remedied if it was, but I think that issue was clarified because it wasn't within the 2 years. Right. So all good.
All right, so let's move on then to agenda planning we have a retreat coming up on the 29th, which is a Saturday. We have the North Amherst Library meeting room between 12 and 4. We have Dr. Z with us just until 1. You're gonna flip the agenda a little bit and do the Dr. Z part first because she has to go. But then there's some just committee work that focuses on our annual agenda, the topics that we want to tackle this year, and norms, goals, routinizing whatever we can routinize, starting to do some foundational work. I asked Sarah and Andrew to put their heads together with very little direction. I'm sorry, Sarah, about some, defining parts of the district, seeing if we can kind of create a vision of who we are, start to create a vision of who we are, and what's important to us instead of the many different priorities that you have in the many different documents. So that's what I'm thinking for the retreat, but I'm certainly open to suggestions. Sarah, I see you. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, since it starts at noon, should we eat before we come? Are we having lunch together? What is
I would love to
thought
have
about that? Just
I
let me
would-
know. Just
I
let us
would
know.
love to have lunch together. If you want to figure out where, I'd love to know where you would like us to bring lunch in from.
I was going to bring mine from home, but we
You can do
I'll
that.
think about it. I'll think about it.
All right. I would like to have a meal.
And that's okay, actually. I've never, with the library, are they cool with that? Do you know?
I haven't asked yet.
Oh.
But maybe we should back up the lunch part till 11:30 because we just have Dr. Z until 1. Let me think about that a little bit. So there is that handy dandy Google form for agenda items. I spent too much time looking for a free visual to put as a headline, as a heading. I'm also working on a similar document. It's come to my attention that central office would benefit from a definitive understanding of what we as a committee have requested from them for the next meeting. So I also have experimented with a similar form where we can just put things in there, and then it populates a sheet, and then I can curate that from a sheet just to kind of have everything all together. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's my idea. So, Bridget.
Yes, when I just filled out your handy dandy form.
Yay.
And as I was going through it, I have some question for clarification.
Okay.
You had action, consent, report, discussion, information. I checked off a bunch of boxes because I'm not sure how I understand how some differ from others, but others not so much. So I don't know if I'll be alone in that, but it was something I wanted to mention.
Okay, that's just how the posts get done on board docs. That's just boxes I check. But
Okay.
that part, and the only part that's required is the request. So you can just leave any of those out if they don't speak to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so fill those out. Maybe I'll push out the form after I find the right picture to go along with it. My forms tend to be very minimal, but I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Sarah, anyone want a second?
Or-
Andrea.
Oh,
Second.
Andrew second.
Andrew, did you second?
Yes.
I did.
Okay, Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
or Jane?
Yes.
And Deb's a yes. Thank you all. We are adjourned at 8:30. Good night.
Good night.
Everyone,
Thank you.
Thank you, Amherst Media.
Thank you, Amherst Media.